not. Secondly, is there in itself is the window that displays the presentation, and I am going to be showing you and playing a video. And then off to the right-hand side is a panel that you can view the participants that have logged on. I'm going to also get you involved by using the chat feature. The way that that will work is you'll be asked a question, and then if you type in your response in the blue bordered box, send it to all participants. Dana will read your responses to make this a fun, interactive. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Inspiring Solutions, it's an organization now for over 25 years that have impacted cultures in a variety of different industries around the country. This happens to be our model for inspiring from top down and bottom up within an organization. We're going to talk about strategic planning during our January webinars. So if you are involved as a senior leader in your organization, this would be a great topic to help recharge and refocus your leaders in the first of the year. Also, next month, we're going to be doing a program on inspiring leadership. We also do team development from a frontline or a new employee standpoint. We help organizations make good hiring decisions. And then once hired, making sure that your onboarding process is solid to give people that sense of belonging and early confidence to be more productive in the job. Our topic for this month is on attitudes. And then we also do a variety of different training as well as surveys on the area of sales and customer service. If you'd like to learn more about our programs and our keynotes and our learning assessments, even some training kits that if you are responsible for conducting training in your organization, feel free to call to request a copy of our catalog to be mailed to you, or you can simply download them off our website, inspiringsolutions.com. So our goals for this hour is to continue to give you a monthly inspiration, motivation, exposing you to one of our inspiring programs and or products. This particular webinar, we're going to help you to analyze the good, bad, and ugly attitudes and how they're communicated. I'm going to share with you a 5-step process for dealing with difficult attitudes, or bad apples, as we call them. And then finally, how in this negative world can we maintain a positive attitude? Materials that we're going to be using attached to your instructions include a handout called Staying Positive in a Negative World. You can take notes as we go through these interactive exercises. There's also a program description that allows you to bring me in or Dana in to conduct this for your organization or even at a conference. And then the last, as always, we announce the upcoming topics for our future webinars. After this webinar, we always ask for feedback, and this is real important for helping us to understand the topics of interest. As a presenter, it helps me understand what kind of features, what kind of learning experience you enjoy in these webinars. So please take the time, make the time. If you're watching alone, fill it out for yourself. I know many of our clients are starting to make this a group opportunity to learn, bringing in people in a classroom or in a training room to sit around and collectively watch. And so I'll encourage you to stay afterwards and as a group complete the survey. So one of the handouts I mentioned, or attachments, is the upcoming webinar schedule. We always, each month, do the same webinar twice. We just finished our 9 o'clock hour, had a great response, so I'm expecting the same with this group. But we do that so if you can't get everybody off the floor at the same time, it's a great way to split up the team so they can experience it. You can go out to our website and register online, and then you're given reminders as well as the instructions right before each of the webinars. So feel free to forward the schedule on to others, post it in bulletin boards, break rooms, so that everybody can participate. So would you agree that today more and more employers are hiring and firing employees not on the basis of their aptitude, but on their attitude? which means you could come to the job or even stay in a job with lots of experience, accolades, credentials, letters behind your name. But if you're the kind of employee that doesn't know how to work well with others, doesn't have a good attitude when they're serving the customer, they can be a very deterrent for doing business with the organization. So what is an attitude? In the worksheet that you want to follow along, I give you a simple example that your attitude comes from your thoughts. In other words, you have certain thoughts and feelings about virtually everything in life, yourself, your job, people around you, whether it be coworkers, customers, and it's those thoughts and feelings that determine your action. In other words, you will oftentimes do or say things based on what you think about. And you've heard the computer axiom, garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, if you want to get to improved results, whether it be in a project or in a relationship, you need to first of all gain control of your attitude. So I'd like for you to look at this chart and ask yourself, what does that say to you? There's a couple of ways of considering this. You could have said opportunity is nowhere. In fact, 9 out of every 10 participants I show this exercise to, first and foremost sees opportunity is nowhere. That's because since age 5, you've been getting feedback from other people, whether it was your teachers, your bosses, your parents, not on what you've done well or what you did right, but what you did wrong. In fact, we live in a negative world, and if you don't believe me, watch tonight's news. It's not going to be all the good things, it's all the bad things. So no wonder we tend to think and speak negatively. Now, maybe you looked a little bit further and thought there was a trick, and there really wasn't a trick, but the point of that is you can also see opportunity is now here. 2 ways of interpreting the same thing. And what that means is you may or may not have control over a situation or a circumstance that you're in, but you can definitely control how you perceive or how you respond to it, which means you can see problems everywhere, or you can think of a problem as a disguised opportunity to respond differently. Now, if you're really creative, there is one more way of interpreting this, and this time of year, I know some of my clients out in Colorado have already experienced snow. So you could also see opportunity, I snow here. Let's now talk about where your attitude has come from. On your worksheet, I'd encourage you to jot down where your attitude has come from. It could be from your parents. It could be from your teachers. It could be a coach. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe it's a previous boss, good, bad, or otherwise. Now, the other impact is through media. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like for you to type in the chat box, what do you remember as some of your favorite television shows? Or maybe it was radio shows. I remember as a kid on Saturdays listening to Buy, Sell, or Trade. It was kind of like the radio's version of eBay. But I want you to think about and describe what do you remember as some of your favorites. Mine was the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family. And then using your chat box off to the side, type in your response and send it to all participants, and Dana will announce as they come in. All right. Well, thank you for those responses. We'll continue to keep you involved. Oh, and John? Oh, you've got your dog. I love that. I love your sign-in. Great. Well, would you agree that attitudes are contagious? Is yours worth catching? By that I mean, how do you feel around people that are positive or negative? We're going to explore that in more depth. And how would you say people feel around you? So on the next part in the worksheet, I'm going to use the late, great Stephen Covey's quality about the 7 habits of highly effective people, beginning with the end in mind. using the example that your thoughts lead to your action, which bring about the results, I'd like for you to choose and circle 3 results that you want to enjoy in life. They may be a dimension you're currently enjoying and you want to continue to enjoy, or maybe it's a dimension you want to gain a greater sense of satisfaction. But choose and circle 3. Now, recognizing those come from what you do, I'd like for you to choose and circle 3 ways that you would like other people use to describe you. Now, you may not have had a good week, so you might not be up to par, but choose and circle 3 ways that you would like, or at least hope, other people would describe you. And then finally, since it all begins within, I'd like for you to choose and circle 3 things that you would believe would stimulate or create a positive attitude within yourself. All right, and then when I do this as an interactive exercise in the classroom, I usually have people in small groups share, and it's amazing how when they talk about what they want, it's very similar to what their coworkers want. The conclusion being is it doesn't matter what your occupation, your gender, your profession, or your race is, we all want some of the same things. So the purpose of this is to help you realize that in order for you to get the results that you want from success, happiness, health, security, adventure, or inner peace, you need to gain control of what you think about. Because if you gain control or channel your thoughts, you're going to be responding to life or in life in a much more positive manner to bring out those results. And like John Maxwell at the bottom of this quote or this handout says, people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. So let's talk about how you communicate your attitude. On the next page in the worksheet, you'll see that we use 3 different ways to communicate: words, tone of voice, and body language. And if you were to take a guess, and again I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box, what percent of 100 do you think comes just from your choice of words? All right, I'm seeing 5%, 20%. All right, I'm going to cut that in half. Would you believe that less than 10%, only 7% of your communication comes from the actual words? Now let's take another guess. Of the 93%, what percent from tone? All right, 10%, John, 60%. 20%. All right, I'm going to split the difference. Just shy of 40. 38% from not what you say, but how you say it. Which means, if you're doing the math, that means over half, or 55%, of communication comes not from what you say, but from what you do. And if any of you have any pets, dogs, cats, parakeets, how many of you believe they communicate to you on a regular basis? And how many of you admit to having some pretty nice conversations with them? I happen to have 2 dogs, call them my kids. I have a mellow yellow lab, and I have a 6-year-old silver lab pup who is wired for sound. As you can tell from this picture, I've got my arm or my hands hanging tightly on his collar. But what we can learn from our fine feathered and furry friends is this: we need to pay attention to how we wiggle our ears and wag our tail as we strut through life, because you cannot not communicate. You're communicating something to people around you all the time. Now, granted, today we can't see each other, which means that tone of voice makes even more of an impression. So let's try it out. If I were to say, she's hot, What would that mean to you? And again, go ahead and type in the chat box what that would mean.
Good looking.
All right, thanks, Dana.
Temperature.
Oh, yeah, she might have a fever. And in the earlier class this morning, someone said she might have hot flashes. So depending on your age, it could have multiple meanings. No wonder our language is so difficult when a single word has so many different meanings. Let's have some fun with another exercise. This happens to be one of the activities in my activity binder, so if you're ever looking for some fun ways to spice up your meetings or training, here's one. What if I were to tell you I didn't steal your cow yesterday? What am I really telling you? And again, use the chat box and type in the response. All right, yeah, it's denying. Someone typed in it's denying. Don't blame me. I always say that it might be indicating that somebody, yeah, like John said, I didn't steal it, but I might know who did. Let's try another one. I didn't steal your cow yesterday. What does that mean or imply? Excuse me.
I stole it the day before, or I didn't steal it at all.
Yeah, that was from
And how you said you stole someone else?
Yeah, when I emphasize the word I didn't steal your cow yesterday, it implies I did something other than stole it. I borrowed it. I'm going to give it back. Or if you're from Iowa or the Midwest, you know what tipping cows. Let's try one more. I didn't steal your cow yesterday. What does that imply?
You stole someone else's cow.
Yeah, I took something else. I took something other than your cow. I took your horse, your husband, your car. So each of those words can have different meaning. And the last one, I think you guys have kind of catching on to this. What would it mean if I said I didn't steal your cow yesterday?
A different day. Well, a couple days ago.
All right, thank you, Dana, and others. Yeah, so the same words, but with a different tone, can have different meanings. And that is true not only in a face-to-face setting, but today you couldn't see me. So the only thing you could do was hear how I was describing the sentence or my statement. And what this means is when you're over the telephone, don't think for an instant that just because the other person can't see you, that they can't hear if you're angry or if you're upset. It comes through loud and clear. So now let's profile the good, the bad, and the ugly attitudes. When I wrote my book, I try to quantify the research indicating that there's 3 different types of attitudes. There are people with positive attitudes, and I call them the players because they're engaged. They're making things happen. There are, unfortunately, negative attitudes. I call them our critics. They're oftentimes cheering or laughing or making fun of the players along the sidelines of the game. And then there's a fairly new but rapidly multiplying attitudes called the neutral attitudes. Unlike the players that are making things happen and the negative attitudes that are trying to stop things from happening, these neutral attitudes sit back and kind of watch life pass them by. So on your worksheet, let's go ahead and jot down some of the ways that these attitudes communicate to us. First of all, I'd like for you to think about people that you know that you would consider to having a positive attitude. And I'd like for you to think about some of the things that they might say to you. Would include, oh, that's great, or awesome, as my nephew says. If you'd ask them for some help, they might say, sure, no problem, whether it was an inconvenience to them or not. Think about how they sound to you when they're talking to you on the phone or in a face-to-face setting. They sound confident or capable Or maybe they just sound cheerful. And finally, how can you tell just passing them by in the hallway or in a meeting? How do they look? What's their facial expression? What's their posture? Well, a lot of times these folks smile. A smile is an international exchange that you can have with someone that says, I like you. You don't even have to know someone by name or even speak their language. And the magic behind a smile is that it comes back much like a boomerang. Do you ever stop to think that a smile looks like a boomerang? But more importantly, what happens when you throw a boomerang? It comes back just like a smile. So my thought or question to you is, how do you feel around these people? If it's at home or at work, these are the people that you enjoy spending your time with. And the other question that I ask for you to think about is, who determines on a regular basis what you say, what words you use? Who determines how you sound on the phone or in a meeting? And who determines how you present yourself, your facial expressions, your posture, or your gestures? And the answer is you. Now, the next two types of attitudes aren't as pleasant, but unfortunately they do exist. And I should forewarn you, people with really bad or negative attitudes say things that we shouldn't share in public, let alone in a professional setting. So keeping it clean, what words might you hear coming from these negative attitudes? Well, a lot of times they're words that end with N apostrophe T. I can't, I won't, I didn't. Or if you ask them, they say, well, I didn't do it, or it's not my fault, not my job. And when they use those words, they sound angry or upset. You may have heard the whining attitude, wah this, wah that. And then how do they look? When you pass them by in the hallway, sometimes there's little to no eye contact because they're afraid they might have to talk with you. Sometimes they cross their arms, kind of like the woman in the picture, crossing their arms, shutting themselves out of a conversation or in a relationship. And a lot of times these people will use closed body language that says to that person, I don't want to talk with you. And it's amazing. And I don't mean anything harmful about our president, but if you watch his body language, a lot of times he uses a language that shuts him out for being approachable. My question to you, how do you feel around these negative, critical attitudes? They can really bring you down. I always challenge you to think if you're around these negative attitudes, they're having a bad day, or they have low self-esteem, and the only way they can see eye to eye with others is to try to cut people down. Don't let them ruin a perfectly good day, because if they're having a bad day, they want you to join in on their pity party. If you do, they win and you lose. And then the last type of negative attitude are the neutral attitudes. And like I said, the positive attitudes make things happen. The negative attitudes try to stop things from happening. And these neutral attitudes sit back and watch life pass them by. And one of their classic lines is the term, whatever. So besides the word whatever, and feel free if you're jotting down notes to jot that down in your handout, they might also say things like fine or you decide. And sometimes they don't say anything at all. Sometimes they don't speak, so therefore they rely on body language. But when they do talk, sometimes they sound monotone or flat. They sound tired or as if they didn't get any sleep the night before. And if you were to think about how they present themselves through body language, how many have ever seen the classic eye roll? They say some snide comment as they roll their eye under their breath at the person sitting next to them. Or maybe they have this blank screen, like a TV that's not turned on. You can't tell from their expression if they're happy, if they're sad, if they're confused, or the confidence. So with those three different types of people, let me ask you, which is the most difficult for you to deal with, whether it be at work or at home? And once again, jot the response in the chat box. All right, we've got John piping in the negative attitudes. Anyone else? All right, well, depending on your confidence, sometimes the negatives can seem a bit harsh because of the fact that they can come on strong with their words, with their presence, and you don't want to evoke an outbreak or something that might be even physically unsafe. However, if somebody is coming to you with a complaint, they might be sounding negative. I oftentimes in our customer service training think about a complaint as a disguised compliment. Everybody loves a good compliment, but no one likes to hear complaints. Well, think about it. A complaint is a disguised opportunity to do something differently. When you think about it by nature, a complaint is someone's request to change. And you can't fix something that you don't know about. So the first way to approach somebody who comes to you with a complaint is to diffuse their anger or frustration with a thank you. You know, thank you for expressing that concern, or thank you for bringing that to my attention. And then ask a question. What would you like to see done differently? Or what were your expectations? Because then they have a chance to voice their thoughts, feeling as though you care. However, it's the neutral attitudes that oftentimes are very difficult to understand because they don't speak. So what I'd like to do today is give you some choices. You, first of all, have a choice of how you communicate through your choice of words, tone of voice, and body language. But you also have a choice of how you interact with other people. You may recall the article that went out this month featured the 5 steps for dealing with a difficult attitude. And many of you might know somebody who is difficult, and we want to teach you how to deal with those bad apples. Because like the cliche, one bad apple can ruin the whole bunch. In the workplace, what that means is you might have a great team, but all of a sudden someone takes on a bad or foul attitude, and it can truly lower the morale. It can cause a kink in your communication or even cause or distrust with each other. I created a video training program called Bad Apples. And in the video program, there are 5 different scenarios. The know-it-all boss, which is an employee who confronts her boss who's difficult. There are a couple examples of a manager confronting an employee. So if you're a manager or a supervisor, number 2 talks about dealing with somebody who's not contributing to the team. And number 5 deals with that whatever non-passive or very passive employee. And then number 3 gives an illustration of how do you confront a difficult customer. And the one that I want to show you next is an example of 2 coworkers that are dealing with each other, resisting change. So on the next page in your workbook, if you want to follow along, jot down what these 5 steps are, and afterward we'll walk through them.
Every once in a while, I run into one of those people who think that change is a 4-letter word. They get so wrapped up into their own way of doing things that they can't or won't see that there might be a better way. Good morning. Liz. Got a minute? Well, actually, I was going. This is important. It'll only take a minute. Let's go in here. Did you work on these? Sure. Why? Because I don't see the new treatment codes here anywhere.
Listen, I have better things to do than to learn a new list of treatment codes every 6 months. I don't have time for that.
No one likes to deal with the changes we're up against. That I don't have time for an attitude? That wasn't helping the situation at all. Help me understand. You did see the memo on reporting patient care plans, didn't you?
Probably, but that's beside the point. My job is to make sure patients get the best care they can get, and I can't do that if I have to learn how to fill out a new form every 2 weeks.
we're dealing with somebody who's got the flexibility of a fence post, we're talking about deep-rooted feelings. And sometimes, the most we can do is offer a new perspective. You know, give them something to think about, and then hope for the best. And then, we need to focus on regaining a positive attitude for ourselves.
Look, maybe it would help if I had a better understanding of what the issue is for you.
You want to know? First of all, we had to redo everything, all the files, and that took weeks. And then they changed all the treatment codes again for no good reason. And good luck trying to get everybody to do it the same way.
We're all under a lot of stress with the changes in regs, insurance reporting, the computer system, everything. She's always liked things just so. But now, none of us could do anything right. I know how you must feel. These changes are huge, but they're really important for maintaining our accreditation.
But there was nothing wrong with the way he did it before. And who's to say they won't decide that this doesn't work and change it again?
Well, I guess there are no guarantees. But they've invested a lot in making sure we're in compliance. And really, the new codes aren't that hard to remember after you've used them for a little while.
For you, maybe.
I'd be happy to show you how I keep them straight. There are a couple of little tricks I use.
Fine. When I've got a spare day or two, I'll let you know. Right now, I've got a bath to give.
Liz, listen. This really is important. I know it's frustrating, but is there anything I can do to help?
I doubt it. But I appreciate your offer.
Sure. Let me know if you think of anything.
I will. I love helping people. That's why I got in the field to begin with. But I don't know. All these changes. I guess I don't need to take it out on everybody else. She did offer to help.
Confronting someone who isn't flexible can feel like you're running a marathon. That's why it's really important to recover and go on. Regain a positive attitude ourselves, and then find ways to keep it going. You know, one of the best ways to do this is to follow through on your commitment to helping others improve their attitude. You know, encourage them, even when we see the slightest change for the better. It's amazing how far a pat on the back will go.
All right, so that was an illustration of how those 5 steps sound during a conversation. So let's walk through each of the steps. The first one being determine your involvement. And to do that, you observe the attitude, in other words, what they said or what they did. And then before asking or confronting them, you ask yourself a couple of questions. Is this person important to me? In other words, it is a coworker, a customer, a family member, a friend. So if it's important, you might want to confront them. But if it's somebody who just cuts you off in traffic, there's a lot of attitudes on the roads these days. We call people that drive faster than us maniacs. We call people that drive slower than us idiots. And that we call people that everyone else ought to get out of our way. So they're not, in the scheme of things, that important. However, if it has happened before, you might want to confront them because you don't want it to become a habit. It may or may not affect you or affect others. And the last is, do you have the time? It's not a quick fix. So do you have the time now, in appropriate place, to confront this person? So if you've said no to any of those questions, you have an option to either temporarily or permanently remove yourself. Or I sometimes say walk away. You know, sometimes it's counting to 10. Sometimes sleeping on it, coming back fresh the next day can give you a different perspective. But if you said yes, you move on to the second step, which is to understand them. I think a lot of times we forget this step because the purpose is to ask questions to not assume. And you know what happens when we assume, right? Well, the best way to ask questions to truly learn are the 5 W's and the H. And if you remember them, jot them down. Or the who, what, when, where, how, and the power question that kids consistently ask parents, why? Why? Why did you roll your eyes? Why did you say it that way? Why do you feel that way? Whatever it is, so you can understand where they're coming from. Next is then to summarize his or her thoughts and feelings, because maybe you weren't aware that they hadn't been given proper training or they had other pressing deadlines. If there's one intangible gift that I would like for you to take into this holiday season as well as throughout the new year is to have an attitude of accepting people. Just because someone is different from you doesn't make them wrong and you right. Doesn't make you better than them. It just simply makes them different. And a lot of times in the workplace, I think people feel as though they have to like each other. And that's not oftentimes possible. However, if you can have an attitude of accepting people, the way they talk, the way they complete a job, it's going to be a lot easier to have a relationship. So then ask yourself, now that I know the circumstance, do I still need to make a change? And let me give you an example. One time, and this was back in the 80s when I was managing an employee, she was 2 hours late for work. So this was before cell phones. And I remember thinking, uh-oh, I've got a tardiness issue that I need to confront. Well, if I would have been embarrassed. Because after she got settled into her office, she came quickly into mind to apologize for being late. She was in a car accident. And how many times do we usually think the worst about someone before we find out the facts? So once again, I could remove myself because it wasn't an issue. But if you do know the facts and you still want to make a change, step number 3 is to influence their attitude. Note the word influence. Can you make somebody change their attitude or behavior? Absolutely not. But here are some ways you can. One is to describe how you feel. You know, maybe they weren't aware of how you feel about the circumstance. You have the right to have a response or a reaction, but I want to caution you. Sometimes you might choose to use words to describe your feeling that could actually add fuel to the fire. For instance, let's say you did something wrong, and I went up to you and said, I'm really mad or angry that you did that. Probably would respond quite defensively. Well, hey, Michelle, you had no idea what was going on. But let's say I handled it differently and said afterwards, let's talk about it. We sat down and talked about the situation, and afterwards I said, you know, I'm really disappointed in the outcome. How does the word disappointed make you feel differently? And jot down in the chat box how you would respond if someone or if I shared with you my disappointment. It's a power word, and I'll encourage you to jot it down on your handout. All right. Yeah, you'd feel a little bit probably more respected because you were feeling as though I respected you. Could be feeling a bit of guilt because I expected you to do something that I really thought you could. And another way to do it is to explain possible consequences. As a parent or as a manager, don't throw out any meaningless consequence that you're not prepared to follow through with. Because if their attitude doesn't change or behavior doesn't improve and there's no consequence, your credibility goes down the tube. All right, thanks, Amanda. Another way to influence their attitude is to suggest other ways for them to think about it. You know, did you ever stop to think when you rolled your eyes in the meeting how that really kind of put a damper on people's comfort or communication or creativity? Or did you ever stop to think when you said that how the customer responded? And then invite a reaction with a question like, well, what do you think? And you might need to add some silence. And eventually they'll come back with a response because you need to gain their agreement that there's a problem. Because unless you gain their involvement or engagement, ownership of the problem will remain yours. Then you move on to step number 4. And here's where you've got to make sure you resolve the problem by communicating expectations. In fact, if there's one common element of a dissatisfied situation, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a customer, or even in a personal relationship, it's because unmet expectations. So I'd come back and ask, well, have you communicated your expectations? Do you clearly understand or explain what's expected of you? Then, once you communicate the expectation, get the person involved in mutually discussing the solution. How are we going to eventually solve the problem and agree on the one that's going to meet your expectations? And then once you've done that, you move on to the last step, which sometimes is difficult because people hold grudges. I will commend guys. Guys are great at resolving conflict. You might have seen how they debate in a meeting how something should be done. They listen with respect. Then afterwards, they'll go out for lunch as if nothing happened. Women, on the other hand, they will refuse to talk to somebody for days. I'll say for decades. Or maybe they'll talk around the other person's back. So one of the things you need to do is to learn how to recover and go on by regaining your positive attitude. Maybe there were some words that hurt your feelings. Maybe there were some things that made you feel uncomfortable. But in order for you to have a meaningful relationship with this person, you need to learn how to follow through with commitments and recognize any, and I would circle the word any, change or improvement that they make in their attitudes. I'll give you an example. I've learned in parenting that kids have a different definition of what a clean room is to parents. I remember when Chad was expected to make his bed and clean his room before he went off to school. And after that first day of school, oh my gosh, his room looked like World War III. Well, that night at dinner, his father and I sat down and explained our expectations. And the next day, checking in on his room, you could have bounced a quarter off that kid's bed. And what was important for us to do that night and several nights thereafter is to praise him, recognizing that people are like plants. They are attracted to positive words. So even the little things make a big difference to changing or improving attitudes. Now, I may have gone through that fairly quickly, but I'd like for you to jot down in the chat box which of the 5 steps are going to be most important to you in dealing with a difficult attitude. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And I'll put them up on the screen so you can see them at a glance. All right, Heidi says number 5. Thank you. Oh, another number 5. Number 2, yes, thank you. A lot of times number 2 is skipped. Number 3. So I'm not going to say it's easy, but I will tell you this is a proven process for dealing with difficult attitudes. Learning how to turn those bad apples into good apples. All right, thanks, Marian. Now let's explore how you can use this. This is actually a video training program that you can purchase, or I'm going to talk about how you can get certified to use this in the workplace. On the last page in the workshop workbook, I want to help you to channel the power within with 5 attitude adjustment techniques and 5 maintenance strategies. So let's first of all tune up our stinking thinking. The first tune-up technique is called listen to your self-talk. What that means is over the next several days, I want you to be aware of your choice of words, tone of voice, and body language. And like you said and described earlier, think about if you would be positive, negative, or neutral. The choice is yours. The second part of this tune-up technique is about a little engine that could. Remember the classic story about the little engine that could? She kept chanting over and over again, I think I can, I think I can, and eventually was successful in carrying the toys over the mountain. And likewise, you too, if you think you can do something with some hard work and determination, you will. But if you think you can't, or if that's what you tell yourself, you won't because you've already given up. So listen to your self-talk. The next tune-up technique to practice is to pursue happiness. If that was something that you chose earlier in the exercise about what you want in life, you've got to learn to find it on your own accord. Because unfortunately, I find far too many people waiting for someone or something to bring them happiness. Dana's son is a senior in high school this year, and you may remember back those days where you thought, oh man, I can't wait until I graduate, move out from underneath mom and dad's control, and then I'm going to finally start living life. You went on to college, and by that last semester, you couldn't wait to get that first job. Well, then you got the job, and then came the bills. And even today, you think, man, this thing called life isn't as much fun as I thought. Or you're guilty of saying to yourself, gosh, I can't wait till the weekend. Or I can't wait until I go on vacation. Or worse yet, I can't wait till I retire. Well, let me tell you that you have to gain control of what you think about. Because if you don't learn to enjoy each day, there's no guarantees for tomorrow. So what I'd like you to do is jot down on your handout or maybe even type in the chat box what brings you joy or happiness today. Last weekend I actually started and finished decorating my house for the holiday. I'm going to be out of town with my brother's family in Phoenix so over the holiday or Thanksgiving, so I wanted to be able to enjoy it. So think about and jot down in the chat box Several this morning talked about going to meetings or going to movies with family or friends over the weekend. All right, John's going to do some golfing. Oh, golfing today. Socializing, reading. Absolutely. Think about what brings you joy today. Oh, relaxing this evening. Good for you. So learn to embrace the day, because if you waste it, it will become yesterday. The next tune-up technique is going to help you deal with change. It's called seek comfort with change. Doesn't that sound like an oxymoron? Putting two words in the same sentence that just really don't go together, kind of like pretty ugly jumbo shrimp, or one of my favorites, Microsoft Works. Because when we encounter something that's different, it's not very comfortable. In fact, how many of you remember using the old-fashioned typewriter, where the most excitement came at the end of the sentence when you could hit the button and turn to the next line? Well, we need, in our fast-paced, changing, consistently changing world, we need to embrace it, because if we don't, it could kill us. For instance, remember Charles Schultz? He brought us Peanuts, Charlie Brown and the gang, and he was about to embark on one of life's significant changes, retirement. And when asked what he was going to do, he said, you know what, I don't know, because my entire life was focusing in on my career. And unfortunately, the same week that his last issue came out, he died. It's a simple reminder that if we don't embrace it, expect it, and even plan for change, it could kill us. The next tune-up technique is going to help you deal with people. It's called value relationship. And I oftentimes think about this from a personal perspective, you know, those family and friends that mean a lot to you. From a work perspective, realize that, you know what, those people you work with, your job, pays your bills. And when I do team building, a lot of times I'll have teams create their golden rules, which you probably have heard before. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Or there's even a platinum rule now that says treat others as they would like to be treated. In our office, we have our 5 or 6 promises that we've made to each other. It's just ground rules that we use when we're interacting or communicating with each other. One is to seek the third solution. What that means is I really promote people contributing their ideas and their thoughts. And sometimes if you build on each other's ideas, you can even have a better quality idea, which we refer to as the third solution. And then the last way to tune up any kind of stinking thinking is to stop shoulding on yourself. Now, I said something that many of you thought I said something I shouldn't. What I said was stop shoulding on yourself. How many times in a day does a voice go off inside, or maybe even say it out loud to somebody, oh man, I should have never done this, or I should have never done that. Things would have been so much better. Or maybe it's something in the future where you say, well, you know what, I should, and then you come up with an excuse. But I don't have time, but I don't have the energy, but I don't have the money. Well, recognize this. You can never should have done anything, which means you've either done it or you haven't. But if you haven't, you have an opportunity to transfer it to a to-do. So here's I'm going to give you an assignment. I'd like for you to think about something that you should do between now and next Monday morning. So it could be something that you need to do yet before the end of your workday. I know what I need to do is I need to have a conference call with a new client in Detroit, and I'm going to get that scheduled for 1 o'clock. Maybe it's something that you should do over the weekend. I have 2 cousins, they're twins, and I think they're in 2nd grade, and they're going to have a school program this weekend. And so what I will do is go to their matinee either tomorrow afternoon or Sunday afternoon. So what I'd like you to do is not just think it, but I want you to ink it. Or better yet, I'd like you to type it in the chat box. Write down on your handout or type in the chat box something that you should do that you will do by Monday morning. It could be a personal or a professional task. Oh, thank you, John. Meditate. Clean the house, laundry. Sounds like some good chores. Pay my something license tag. Oh, probably your car tag, license tag. Awesome. Your car. Oh, car. Gotcha. All right. Thanks, Heidi. All right. Well, to hold you accountable, I would love for you to send us proof. Take a picture of the before or the after if you're cleaning out. We had somebody say that they were going to shovel out their garage. In fact, I need to clean out my car, and so I will clean out my car because that needs to be done too. Take a picture before and after and send us proof. We will hold you accountable. Now, I want to acknowledge that everyone is allowed to have a bad day now and then, and I'm not this Pollyanna going around whistling happy tunes every day, because I have bad days. I find that the bad days make the good days just that much better. But if on those bad days I can laugh, it certainly helps to lighten the load. So what I want to give you are now 5 maintenance strategies that I write about to help you maintain a positive attitude even in a negative world. The first strategy is to start fresh each day. Regardless of how bad the day before was, how many computers you crashed or relationships you ruined, you've got a clean slate. And just like a coach before a team gives his or her team a pep talk, I want you to give yourself a pep talk. So try it out. Tomorrow morning after you've brushed your teeth, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and say out loud, as Billy Crystal said it best, "Darling, you look marvelous." Because on some days, that may end up being the nicest thing you hear all day. Second strategy, learn how to clarify and prioritize your life. What that means is the first step is to clarify the roles. As a wife, as a father, as a brother, as a parent, maybe as a child, you're parenting your parents, maybe as a manager, as a volunteer. Think about the roles that are important to you, and then describe how you would like to be remembered in those roles. Having recently lost both my parents, I know full well that you can't take the stuff with you. They had a beautiful home filled with lots of things, lots of memories, but they can't take those with them. So I'd like for you to think about how would you like to be thought of in those roles. And back in 1991, when I had just gotten married for the first time, I had thought about how I wanted to live my life. And I did write down 3 guiding statements that continue to guide my day, and I kind of use it as my compass. The first is that I'm a happy and healthy person, because I realized in college when I became ill, moderation is key. I was burning the candle at both ends, trying to maintain a 4.0 grade point average, not missing out on any extracurricular activities. And I learned that if I don't take care of myself, I can't help other people, and that's important. The second guides my personal life. That is, am I a loving, caring, patient daughter, sister, relative, and friend? And then finally, the last monitors my career, and that is that I'm an honest and trustworthy professional. And when I wrote those, I put it on the note card and put it on the mirror in my bathroom. I put it on my planner. I carried it with me, and I eventually memorized it. And to this day, it continues to guide my life. I'll encourage you, especially as we wrap up this year, if you don't have that done, do so. The third maintenance strategy is to enjoy the moment. Being present is another way of thinking of it. In fact, I found this quote that really kind of captures it. The past is history. It's over and done with. You can't do it over. There's no do-overs in life. The future is a mystery. It's for you yet to create. But today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And I learned this principle from a woman named Anita. I took a Dale Carnegie several years back, and she was diagnosed with a terminal breast cancer. And right before we took our break for the holidays, she got up in front of a group and told us that she was excited because they were going to honor her with a party. And I, knowing her full well what she went through, many of us just broke down in tears. And she came back very confidently, and she said to us, do not cry for me. She said, I feel so blessed that I'm going to have the opportunity to let my family, to let my friends know how important they are to me. Don't take life for granted. So I took that to heart, and on that Friday, or on that Sunday night, which was a standing routine. I called and checked in on my parents. And I knew I was loved, but for whatever reason, it was very seldom that my parents ever told us kids that they loved us. And right before, for the very first time, we said our goodbyes, I told my parents that I love them. And my palms to this day still get sweaty when I think about the built-up emotions before saying that. And afterwards, I thought, oh my gosh, I should have never said it because there was this long silence. And then in a little while, my dad with a lump in his throat said, ditto. But from that phone conversation on, before we said our goodbyes, whether it was on the phone or face-to-face, we said those magic words. Don't wait for when you think you're going to have more time or a better time to let people know how important they are to you. Not just this holiday season, but for all seasons. Now, on a little lighter note, maintenance strategy number 4 is to express, don't suppress your feelings, which means if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. I learned another way to express feelings from my grandfather. He was a jovial Irishman, and wherever he was or whatever he was doing, he would whistle. And the reason that whistling is important is that it's virtually impossible to have a bad attitude while you whistle. For instance, I'm going to start whistling a very popular tune. Remember Mayberry days. You might want to join in. If you don't recognize the tune or your whistler won't work, feel free to click your fingers or clap your hands. If you're doing this in the workplace, make some noise because people will wonder what you're up to. Here it goes. Woohoo! Whistle while you work, whistle while you go through life, because not only are you going to feel good, you're going to make people want to be around you. Now, the last way to maintain a positive attitude is to surround yourself with positive influences using your 5 senses. And in my book, I give several inexpensive ways of stimulating your 5 senses. Think about your sight. Think about what you like to see. Birds, actually, this happens to be an example in our office where we have an office that has no windows. And so our summer intern, Sarah, who's pictured here, hung a mural of our window to the beach. Now, I know one of my dear friends, Gail, who's on this webinar, lives and walks and sends wonderful pictures from sunsets or sunrises from the beach. But until then, we actually have this to help our attitude. Think about what you like to hear, the sounds, whether it's the waves, whether it's the music that you like to hear. Think about what you like to smell. I just bought a bunch of candles because I love the aroma of a candle burning at home. Think about what you like to taste or drink. Chocolate's always a favor. One of our clients sent us a caramel apple. So each afternoon, we've been having a little afternoon snack by sharing a caramel apple. And then finally, what do you enjoy touching or feeling? Did you know that you need 3 hugs a day? It actually helps to lower your blood pressure. So I hope you've gained some ways that you can maintain a positive attitude in a negative world. And if you need more reinforcements, you can go out on our website and purchase our book, Attitude, the Choice is Yours, my training program, Attitude or Bad Apples. And if you're looking for some fun interactions to add to your training modules, feel free to look at our attitude binders. If you'd like to bring this program into your organization or speak at a conference, we've given you the flyer that describes this program. But we also want to extend a special invitation to you to get certified to teach this program and one more to improve attitudes in the workplace. By going through the certification, you'll get all the resources and instructions to not only teach this class, staying positive in a negative world, but also the bad apples, dealing with difficult attitudes. And the date's been set. We did this twice last year. We're going to do it once this year in January, January 18th and 25th. Those are Thursdays. We're going to do it as an online certification, much like this platform, from 8:30 to 11:30. And between now and December 25th, we're giving you a discounted rate of $595. If you're interested, mark on today's evaluation form that you'll be prompted to right after the conclusion of this webinar, and Dana will follow up with more information. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. Please join us for next month's webinar, December 15th, on inspirational leadership, where you'll be exposed to a 360-degree instrument that you can use to get feedback from your team or coworkers. Your feedback matters to us, so please take the time, make the time to give us your comments. And because we are coming upon a very lovely season, I thank you not only for joining us today, but I wish you and your family a very blessed holiday season. Thank you, and have a great day for yourself and others.